I think what we identify is that in a rules-based order, hypocrisy is vulnerability. And so I think what we are seeking is a return to a rules-based order that eliminates the hypocrisies around when too often in the West we look the other way for inconvenient populations to act out these paradoxes.
And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency.
What's up, family? So let's talk about what really happened at the Munich Security Conference, because if you were watching closely, you noticed something, an obsession, a straight up fixation on this phrase, rules-based order. They kept saying it over and over and over again, like it's some sacred scripture. And then here comes AOC, which you've seen before. Secretary Marco Rubio just spoke, as you guys just heard. Before him, AOC is stepping onto the world stage and repeating it like she just discovered the cheat code to sounding intelligent in a room full of European elites. Rule-based order, rules-based order, rules-based order. She said it over and over again. And I'm sitting here thinking, do you even know what you're saying? Or are you just trying to audition? Because let's be honest, that's what it feels like. That's what this felt like when it came to AOC. This wasn't a serious foreign policy breakdown. This was an audition tape for 2028. This was, look at me, I can hang with the geopolitical crowd. And the whole centerpiece of her argument was that it's somehow hypocritical for the United States to act in its own best interest while also talking about a rules-based order. So let's slow this down and break this down in plain English, because most people don't live and breathe foreign policy jargon. And when they say rules-based order, what they mean is a system that was set up after World War II. America wins the war. America becomes the dominant power. America helps create global institutions like the United Nations, NATO, the World Bank, you name it. And those are basically clubs and agreements between countries that set standards for trade, security, and cooperation, right? That's it. That's all it really means. And the simple fact that she can sit up there and say so many things that are broad, because also not to mention the club of IMF, that is the International Monetary Fund. It's a Washington, D.C. based organization, which is an organization of 191 countries working to foster global monetary cooperation, not corruption, global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability. So that's what I mean by trade, security, and cooperation. And it's not mystical. It's not holy. It's a framework created by powerful countries to manage global politics. Think of it like this. Imagine you own the biggest house on the block. After a massive neighborhood fight, you help draft a list of neighborhood rules so everybody stops burning down each other's garages. So you help write the rules because you are the strongest one there on that block. That's the rules-based order. Now, here's the part nobody says out loud. Those rules were written largely by the United States and its allies, and they were written in a way that benefited the United States and its allies. And that's how power works. That's how it's always worked. And when you look at it, countries don't create global systems out of charity. They create systems that protect their interests. So when AOC stands up there and says it's hypocritical for America to act in its own best interests while promoting a rules-based order, what she's basically arguing is that America should restrain itself for the sake of appearing morally consistent. But here's the problem: every single country acts in its own best interest. Every single one. Germany does it, France does it, China absolutely does it. Russia definitely does it. If Germany needs cheap energy, they go get it. If France wants to protect its farmers, they subsidize them. If China wants dominance in manufacturing, they rig the system to get it. But somehow when America prioritizes America, suddenly it's a moral crisis. It's wrong, it's evil. And that's what I mean by that being morally consistent when it comes to AOC standards and how hypocritical it is, because how can you sit there and stand up for and represent the United States of America, but then sit there and let United States of America continue to bend over backwards to other countries, but not protect itself? For example, it explains why open borders open borders during the Biden administration happened to happen, right? Because everybody can come over here and rip off and become um, wealthy and acquire some type of um, how can I put this? Acquire some type of riches when it comes to monetary gain, tackling and taking on opportunities when they're in this country illegally to send money back to their country where they're originally from. And America has been ripped off for so long because illegals that's disrespect this country because they shouldn't be in this country in the first place. But instead, they're taking on opportunity, but it has to be morally consistent where we have to help everybody while America get ripped off on the behalf of the American taxpayer when this person is here illegally, but then they're taking away an opportunity such as a job, for example, from an American worker that pays taxes, from a legal immigrant that pays taxes and actually came into the country the right way. And they take that job, which takes an opportunity for someone who rightfully so, is entitled to doing everything they're supposed to do to being in this country the right way or being in this country as American citizen, and instead they get discredited, but the illegal gets to take on the opportunity because America has to morally save an illegal who disrespects this country coming in here and then send all their money back to their country and leave when they want to, coming in and out as they please. That's the moral consistency that I'm talking about with AOC. That's hypocritical and so disrespectful to the country she solely cares about, right? Which I believe she doesn't. The same way that the Democrats fatten their pockets in the name of nonprofit or social reform or acting like they're doing humanitarian acts to help uh, feed children, the most vulnerable, help the elderly. And I'll give you an example, like I've always been consistently doing with the Minneapolis fraud under Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey when it came to feeding the America program, right? Or what was the program called in Minnesota? It was called what was it called? Um what was it called, family? The charity that was in Minnesota with the fraud. Feeding Minnesota. I forgot what it was called. Um The Feeding Our Future Fund, there we go, was a Minnesota nonprofit that claimed to be distributing federal aid for food programs, was actually a scam that stole 250 million of taxpayer money. Dozens of people being convicted of crimes related to theft of public funds from the federal government. And that's what um, someone like AOC, who says the most anti-American rhetoric, obviously cares about, fattening her pockets in the name of nonprofits, acting like she really cares, but she doesn't, in the name of fraud and all other acts to make it as though she's doing the right thing morally, but morally she's only standing up to what morally benefits the Democrat Party and herself, right? Which is why they fought so hard for Somali immigrants who were committing the fraud, specifically this group, because at the end of the day, fraud doesn't have a race. But I'm saying all that to say that the Democratic Party and AOC, they are doing it basically the same thing that I gave you guys examples of with illegals. Rip off America, make America bend backwards to other cultures and other individuals while they don't care to cultivate or embrace American culture when they come over here, let alone come in this country respectfully. So now that I went on that tangent, so you guys get where I'm saying when I say that she's out here basically being hypocritical for saying that it's hypocritical, I should say, for America to act in its own best interest while promoting a rules-based order. And what she's arguing is that America should restrain itself for the sake of appearing morally consistent, like we haven't compromised and destroyed our country enough with illegals and so forth, and the examples in Minnesota that I gave you. That's why I had to put that together to give you guys the whole context. So now, with my examples of saying if China wants to dominate manufacturing, they rig the system to get it. But somehow when America prioritizes America, suddenly it's a moral crisis. That's the contradiction in AOC argument. You're acting in your own national interest is not hypocrisy. It's literally the job of a government. The president of the United States is not elected to be the CEO of the planet. He's elected to look out for Americans. And that doesn't mean you abandon alliances. It doesn't mean you torch every agreement. It means you negotiate from strength and you don't apologize for protecting your country, in this case, United States of America, which AOC and the Democrats seem to have a hard time of understanding while letting illegals in the Biden administration, let alone Kamala Harris and the whole Democratic Party, continue to fight for illegals in the first place out of disrespect for the American citizens, taxpayers, and legal immigrants who came over here the right way. But what really stood out was how she kept repeating rules-based order like a student who just learned a new vocabulary word and wants participation points. And that phrase is a catnip in European political circles. They love it because from their perspective, the rules-based order locks in America's security guarantees while allowing them to spend less on defense and more on social programs. NATO, for example, is part of that system. The United States carry the largest military burden in NATO. We spend the most. We project the most power. We fund the most capability. Meanwhile, for years, many European nations underfunded their own defense, assuming America would pick up the slack, right? When it comes to that. And when you look at that and the whole situation amongst that, that's not a conspiracy. That's public record. So when Republicans, especially Trump, question whether America should continue carrying that disproportionate load, European leaders panic because the rules-based order works great for them when America is the muscle. But that's what this really is about. It's not about abstract rules floating in the sky. It's about who enforces them and who pays for them. And when Trump says we're not going to be taken advantage of, which I stand for solely, suddenly that's framed as an attack on the rules-based order. But no, it's just really a renegotiation of terms. If you are in a business partnership and you realize you're paying 70% of the expenses while your partner is only paying 30%, you say, hey, we need to rebalance this. Right? That's not you abandoning the partnership. That's you demanding fairness. But in these elite circles, fairness is rebranded as nationalism, and nationalism is treated like a dirty word. And this is where AOC's inexperience really showed, because foreign policy is not a campus debate. It's not a hashtag. It's about leverage, deterrence, alliances, trade-offs, and power. Power is the ability to influence outcomes. That's it. Countries use economic power like sanctions or trade deals. And they use military power, troops, weapons, deterrence. They use diplomatic power, alliances, and negotiations. So the rules-based order only works when there is power behind it. Rules without enforcement are just suggestions. If the United States stops enforcing global stability, shipping lanes, deterrence against aggressors, intelligence coordination, that system changes overnight. So when she trashes Trump on that stage and frames America first as some reckless betrayal of global norms, she's ignoring the basic reality that America first simply means America voters come first. It means border security matters. It means trade deals should benefit American workers. Right? And it means we don't sign agreements that hollow out our own manufacturing base. That's not isolationism. Isolationism would be to be pulling out everything and hiding behind the ocean. That's not what's being argued. What's being argued is leverage. And here's the bigger point. The reason this phrase keeps getting repeated at conferences like the Munich, the Munich Security Conference here, is because language shapes perception. And if you say rules-based order enough times, it's like the moral high ground. It sounds civilized, it sounds responsible, but if you translate it into normal language, it's this. We want the current global power structure to stay intact, and we want America to keep underwriting it. That's what it means. So when Republicans question the cost-benefit analysis of the arrangement, they're not burning down the world. They're asking whether the return on investment still makes sense. Is it worth doing this? Is it benefiting America first? And instead of debating that honestly, you get moral lectures. You get speeches about hypocrisy. You get dramatic framing. And let's call it what it is. This was positioning. This was AOC stepping into an international spotlight and trying to prove she could speak the language of global elites, but repeating a phrase doesn't equal strategic depth. It really showed her ignorance. It really showed how she didn't care much about upholding American voters, but making sure America continue to bend over backwards for these countries at the cost of America, and we continue to roll out the red carpet and benefit them while they continue to abuse and use the United States of America for their own leverage as a country and power. So understanding foreign policy means understanding incentives. What's behind things? Countries act based on incentives, what they're offered, what benefits them. If the incentive structure rewards free riding, countries will free ride. If the incentive structure rewards strength, countries will respect strength. That's not, how can I put this? Cynicism. That's realism. And realism isn't cruel, it's clear-eyed. So no, it's not hypocritical for the United States to defend a global framework while also renegotiating its role inside. It's called strategy. It's called leverage. It's called leadership that puts its citizens first. And the real question isn't whether America believes in rules. The real question is who writes the rules, who enforces them, and who pays for them. Because if you are the one writing the checks and carrying the weight, you absolutely have the right to reevaluate the terms. And that's what this whole debate is really about. Power, responsibility, and whether America is allowed to prioritize itself without being morally shamed on the world stage. And that's the conversation they don't want in plain English, but that's not that's the conversation we are having. Rather, AOC and the Democrat Party want to have it regardless. So now I want you guys to check out this next clip.
Honest reply, please. Does America...
I've been pretty straightforward and honest so far.
Does America need a rules-based order? And if so, what are you willing to also sacrifice? Because you have been backing this world order for years and years. And thanks to the United States of America, many of us, including Poland, has benefited immensely. And what we're seeing now is a withdrawal. That's an honest, I think, assessment of many of us. And we just ask ourselves, are you willing to fight with us, the Europeans and others, for this world order? And the same question really to Kaja Kallas. Do you feel that the Europeans are willing to really fight for this order?
Thank you.
And I would follow your question, are the Europeans willing and able to take the tough financial steps necessary? I'm a recovering politician myself. I know how tough those votes are when you have a social social support system. But look, to answer your question directly, absolutely. The American people have underwritten with their hard-earned dollar the global multilateral rules-based order since World War II. However, with 37 trillion in debt and counting, the massive debt load that the Western world is facing, I think it is fair on their behalf to ask 450 million Europeans with the same size economy as the United States to be more self-sustaining in their own defense. And it astounds me why that is so controversial I mean, it is...
Ambassador, I think it's not.
It's a fair question. When I go to people in Indiana and Georgia and North Florida that I represented, and it is their money paying more than 180 countries combined into the UN system, it's fair to say, yes, I have to look at them honestly and say it's being well spent, and it's not.
Absolutely. And indeed, I think as Chancellor Merz made very clear, the Europeans have belatedly got the message And there is a recognition that, defense spending has gone up and is going to go up further. Europe needs to get his act together, and I'm going to come to Kaya Kallas again. There's an absolute, that was very clear in Chancellor.
But it wasn't clear in 2014. Why not?
It was, it took, I'm not
we're acting as though things were coming unglued now. It's been coming unglued for 10 years, and no one was responding in an effective way. Now we're asking more forcefully.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing a good result as a result of the 5%.
That was being asked from the audience was, if the Europeans are responding now, do you still believe in multilateralism in this order? Do you still believe in it? Or, as Chancellor Merz said, he said, and I just wrote it down, even the US is reaching the limits of its own power if it goes alone. Do you agree with him that the US could not go alone?
I mean, I'm looking at the grouping I just discussed of our Gulf Arab allies. I'm looking at the Abraham Accords. I'm looking at the fact that the president didn't need to take on Azerbaijan, Armenia, and he did. He didn't need to take on Pakistan and India, and he did. And we're asking the rest of the world to be there with us in a fair way financially. Because there is a cost to the status quo, and the status quo was not sustainable anymore. And that's, I think, on behalf of our constituents, a fair question to ask.
Now, and I'll get into what Mike Watts just said, but I want to add the context for people who don't really follow politics, and I really want to pour some value into you guys' life. And if you guys feel like you're getting value from this video, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. It helps crush that YouTube algorithm. If you're part of the family, I appreciate you for rocking and being part of the family. If you're new to the channel, come subscribe and join the family. And if you're watching this video, I appreciate you just for watching. So the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, right, is commonly known as abbreviated. It's like a big protection team made of different countries that promise to help each other, help defend each other, right? So it's like a group of friends who agree that if one friend gets attacked by a bully, everyone steps in to help. Countries in North America and Europe joined this team so they won't have to face big threats alone. They share military help, information, and planning so problems don't turn into bigger wars like World War II. So America itself, right, is made like a big system with three main parts that share power, so no one part controls everything. You got one part makes the laws, you got Congress. You got, one part carries out and enforces the laws, the president and the executive branch. You got one part that checks the laws and decisions to make sure they're fair and following the Constitution, the courts. And the country, as you know, the United States of America is divided into 50 states. And America is built like a three-part team at the top with, the separations of powers that I just mentioned, Congress, courts, and executive branch, plus 50 state teams underneath, all working together to run the country. So when Mike Tim Watts sit here and say that you hear American taxpayers basically saying they are funding these wars and they're not happy about it, the whole point is that, mentioning my point before we just played this clip, that America has been footing the bill for this military help. And basically, America has often carried more of the burden and used more of its power than other countries, especially in military alliances and working together for global security, right? So the argument goes like this. The U.S. spends more money on defense, sends more troops, gives more foreign aid, and takes on more risk and conflicts, while the partner countries in NATO don't contribute as much money, equipment, or effort as they promise, which takes more money out the American taxpayer and out the country, such as the United States within the 50 states, under the three separation of powers to run the United States. But these other countries only care about making sure that it's cheaper and they get a free ride costing nearly to nothing if they can, to not help and chip in military wise if need be. Because remember I said with the example, it's like a group of friends who agree that if one friend gets attacked by a bully, everyone steps in to help. But what if one friend gets attacked by a bully and only the United States is coming in to help, but not the other countries of North America and Europe that joined the team? So we are footing the bill as a country, United States of America, spending all this money on defense, more troops, more aid, and taking on more risks, while the other countries aren't, as they promised. So when you look at this, it's unfair and plus too much pressure on American taxpayers and soldiers is what Mike Tim Watts is saying. And that's basically what's being said here. So that's why you have to understand foreign policy. But Mike Watts, who's on the screen. who I've been talking about this whole time, not Mike Tim Watts, Mike Watts, is actually arguing on the behalf of the United States. And because the way that the Europeans are framing this, you would think America just woke up one morning and decided to torch the global system. And that's not what's happening. What he's saying is simple. These so-called rules-based order that everyone keeps romanticizing about, it's not working. It hasn't been working. And I told you guys why it hasn't been working, because America had been footing the bill, sending more troops, more money, more machinery, more equipment than the other parties, a part of the deal, to basically fight together. So it prevents, a big war and the European countries and so forth. So when you look at all of that, it hasn't been working, and pretending it doesn't make it true, because pretending it is working doesn't make it true, because this is the same global system that was supposedly designed to prevent major wars, to keep the peace, to stabilize regions before they spiral out of control. Okay. And that was the pitch after World War II. We are going to build institutions like the United Nations so we don't repeat the chaos of the 1930s and 40s. That was the whole point. The UN, United Nations, was supposed to be a global referee. Step in early, de-escalate tensions, prevent full-blown wars. But let's look at reality. Russia invades Ukraine. Hamas attacks Israel. Gaza erupts. Regional conflicts flare up in South America. Instability across Africa. Tensions in Asia. Where exactly is the flawless rules-based order everyone keeps bragging about? Because from my understanding, Donald Trump in our country, United States of America, has been stopping about 7, 8 wars. He stopped. So we have every right as American taxpayer and the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, operating on the best interest of American taxpayer and the United States of America, to say, look, man, we need to negotiate these terms. And at the end of the day, United Nations haven't been doing nothing to keep the peace. So why do we keep funding United Nations? Mic drop. And it's the truth. And like I said, Donald Trump has stopped about 7 to 8 wars. And to be exact, just because I want to be factual here always and speak the facts, and like the mainstream liberal media, he has stopped and de-escalated the Afghanistan war, the potential U.S.-Iran war, which was a crisis de-escalation. He had North Korea, tensions reduction, no war, the Middle East, the regional agreements. So when you look at it, Donald Trump has stopped a lot of wars within his first term of presidency since being back in office. So what do we need the United Nations for again? They were supposed to be the global referee, trying to de-escalate tensions, but we have our president of the United States of America doing it. So that's the reality of it. And if the system was built to prevent large-scale conflict, and we're watching large-scale conflict happen in real time, then it's fair to say the system is failing. That's not radical. That's common sense. If you hire a security company to guard your house and somebody's house keep getting broken into, at some point you stop praising the security company and start asking questions. That's what's happening here. And Mike Watts here on the screen with the mic in his hand is saying something very basic. American leadership is necessary. Yes. Nobody serious is arguing that. Nobody is seriously arguing that America should disappear from the world stage. But leadership doesn't mean writing a blank check forever. Leadership doesn't mean carrying 80% of the weight while everyone else lectures you about morality. AOC. Speaking that nonsense. And the United States has contributed more to the United Nations than over 180 countries combined. We're sitting on $37 trillion in national debt as a country, United States. Let that sink in. $37 trillion. That's not monopoly money. That's real. That's interest payments. That's future tax burdens. That's inflation. And that's economic pressure on American families. So when we say, hey, Europe, you need to step up and spend more on your own defense, that's not abandonment. That's adulthood. Like I always say, the adults are back in office with the Trump administration. That's burden sharing. And I find it ironic, the same people who constantly scream, pay your fair share, Democrat Party, when they're talking about billionaires, suddenly lost all understanding of the phrase when it applies to countries. When it's about taxing the rich, they understand fairness, Democrat Party. But when it's about wealthy European nations contributing more to their own security, suddenly it's offensive. Suddenly it's destabilizing. No, it's consistent. If fairness applies domestically, it applies internationally. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in those European conferences wants to say out loud. If they actually start spending serious percentages of their GDP, and their GDP is basically their gross domestic product, which is the value, the monetary value, or the cost of goods and services produced in their country. Um, when you look at it, which is the total value of everything their country produces in a year, if they start spending serious portions of that on defense like the United States does, something has to give, right? Budgets are not magic. If you increase military spending, you either raise taxes, cut social programs, or grow your economy dramatically. And a lot of these countries have built expensive welfare states, universal benefits, massive social spending under the assumption that America will handle the hard power side of things. Hard power meaning tanks, ships, missiles, deterrence. And if they have to redirect their money into defense, that puts pressure on their own socialist style programs. That's the real tension here. It's not about morality, it's about math. The math ain't mathing, damn it. So when Mike Watts with this microphone on the screen I keep referring to, argument is not burn down multilateralism. It's not withdraw from the world. It's put the United Nations on a diet. And that's a great analogy. When something gets bloated, too many bureaucrats, too much red tape, too many committees talking in circles with word salad, you trim it down. The United Nations was supposed to focus on peacekeeping and conflict prevention. Instead, it's become a massive bureaucracy. And bureaucracy just means layers and layers of administrators, paperwork, meetings, and political maneuvering that slow everything down and don't get shit done. So the argument is refocus it, cut the access, reduce the staff, get back to the core peacemaking functions, the purpose of what the United Nations is for, that I mentioned as being a referee for global peace. So the argument is to refocus it, right? That's reform, right? Getting back to the core peacemaking function. That's reform. That's not destruction. And look at NATO, right? For years, multiple NATO members were not meeting the agreed upon 2% of GDP spending on defense. It took pressure, real pressure from President Trump to get many of them to increase their spending. And guess what? NATO is arguably stronger now because more members are actually investing in their own defense capabilities. That's what leverage does. Leverage means using your position of strength to push for change. If America is the biggest contributor, America has leverage. Using that leverage is a betrayal, it's negotiation. That's why I believe you need to have a business person that understands business truly from a business perspective to be in office as president, to actually negotiate and lobby on the best interests of American citizens and the United States of America and know what the hell they're saying and know foreign policy. So when Mike Watts here on the screen argues that applying similar pressure to the United Nations would make it stronger, the logic is consistent. Reform creates resilience, accountability creates strength, and none of this means abandoning allies. That's the straw man critics keep throwing out, right? Oh, you want reform? You must want isolation. No, the message is simple. Pull your damn weight. If you are in alliance, alliance requires contribution. If you are in a partnership, partnerships require investment. You don't get lifetime benefits with zero responsibility. That's not how business works. That's not how families works. That's why I'm explaining this to an everyday average Joe like myself and you watching this video, because they want us to be foolish, dumb, and ignorant while they continue to do the very thing that's not best for our country. Thank God we have Donald Trump and amazing people in the Trump administration doing what's best and putting America first, damn it. So that's not how countries work. And now Mike Rubio steps in. Mike Rubio. What's up with me? Marco Rubio, Big Rubio, steps in the conversation, responding directly to Democrats, to AOC, Alexandria, Um, what's her damn name? Let me get her name right. See, I don't even know her name. That's how much of respect I don't have for her. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, who you seen, the woman in the first clip that I played in the beginning of this video. So to the Democrats, to AOC, to everyone pushing this narrative that America must return to the golden age of rules-based order, which means America writes the biggest checks, deploys the best or the most troops, absorbs the most risk, and then gets lectured about hypocrisy for daring to prioritize its own citizens. Rubio is going to challenge that framing head on, because the real debate here isn't whether rules matter, it's whether America is allowed to demand, how can I put this? Demand reciprocation, or demand that same energy be returned. Reciprocity without being shamed for it. It's whether reform equals retreat. It's whether fairness only applies when convenient. And that's where this conversation is headed next. So with that being said, let's get into what Marco Rubio had to say.
But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world.
Hell no. I'm not rocking with that. I'm just be honest with you. Because Marco Rubio takes it further, even further. And this is where the whole mask really comes off, because he says something that a lot of people in these elite rooms don't like hearing out loud. He talks about this idea that you guys just heard, that we're supposed to move into a world without borders where everybody becomes a citizen of the world. That's what he just said. Nah, I'm good on that. I don't want that. I don't want to be managed by some vague global identity where national loyalty gets diluted into this feel-good slogan. A country without borders is not a country. Borders are not just lines on a map. Borders means laws. Borders mean accountability. And borders mean you get to decide who comes in, who doesn't, and under what terms. Right? So when politicians say citizen of the world, it sounds enlightening. Or, yeah, it sounds enlightening or enlightened. But what it really means is less control for voters and more control for unelected international bodies. And that's what it means in plain English. And Rubio is pushing back on that whole era of thinking that said, let's blur everything, let's integrate everything, and let's assume economic integration will magically solve political conflict. That was the bet. That was the theory. The theory was this: if we ship millions of working and middle class jobs overseas, factories, jobs, manufacturing jobs, the backbone of middle America, and we send them to places like China, then those countries will grow a middle class. And when a middle class grows, democracy follows. That was the sales pitch. The idea was that economic liberalization, which just means open markets, trade, capitalism, would lead to political liberalization, meaning more freedom, more democracy, more pro-Western governments. So the deal was this: we outsource the factories, we get cheaper goods at Walmart and Amazon. In exchange, these foreign countries become more like us, the United States. Meanwhile, American workers who lost those factory jobs, don't worry, they'll transition into better jobs. And that's what they were told. They'll move into tech. They'll move into services. They'll move into higher skilled positions. That was the promise. But here's what actually happened. Middle America got hollowed out. Towns built around one factory watched that factory shut down. Generations of skilled labor, machinists, welders, assembly line workers suddenly found themselves competing in a completely different economy that didn't value the skills they had built over decades. Yes, we got cheap stuff. TVs got cheaper, clothes got cheaper, electronics got cheaper, but cheap goods doesn't replace dignity. Cheap goods doesn't replace purpose. For a lot of people, work wasn't just a paycheck, it was identity. It was pride. It was being able to say, I make something, I built something, I contribute. And when these production jobs left, it wasn't just an economic shift, it was cultural. Middle class America was built around production, making steel, building cars, assembling machinery, physical labor tied to tangible output. That culture took a hit. Those jobs were gone. And the transition they promised about integrating and moving those jobs over to where they would be trained in fully tech from the production workers and warehouse and factory workers, guess what? They were lost. It didn't fully materialize for millions of people, right? Some sectors boomed, yes. Coastal cities thrived. Tech exploded, right? Finance grew, but large parts of the country felt like they were sacrificed on the altar of globalization. And globalization is just means integrating bringing together economies across borders, reducing trade barriers, which are basically taxes on imports and bringing in and shipping out goods. So goods move more freely between countries. So the theory was free trade benefits everyone, and in some ways it did, but it wasn't easily distributed. The benefits weren't shared equally. When you zoom out of it, what do we really get as as the United States of America? Cheap stuff and a heavier dependence, relying on other countries to give us goods so we can survive as a country on the everyday things that we needed. So we got heavier dependent on foreign supply chains, such as foreign factories and other country factory workers, because we lost our own factory workers by letting cheap goods come in here and the jobs be taken away to other countries. So in this case, China, not just any foreign country, a strategic competitor, an adversary who's against the United States of America. We assume that by sending them over our factories, our manufacturing base, by letting them become the factory of the world, they would gradually become more liberal, more Western, more aligned with democratic values, that they would share back. That didn't happen. Instead, China used that manufacturing boom to strengthen its own state power, modernize its own military, strengthening its own military, and expanding its own global influence, right? So now we're in a position where critical supply chains such as pharmaceuticals, electronics, rare earth minerals are tied to a country we may not align with strategically. That's not theoretical. We saw what supply chain vulnerability looks like during the pandemic: empty shelves, delays, shortages, and that's what dependence looks like. So when Rubio says we can't be dependent on our adversaries, our opponents, that's not some abstract talking point. That's national security. National security isn't just about tanks and missiles. It's about supply chains. It's about whether you can produce what you need in a crisis. It's about resilience. And if you outsource your industrial base to a rival, you weaken your leverage. Leverage, again, is your ability to influence outcomes. So if you rely on someone else to make your critical components or ingredients of something, they have leverage over you. Put it in simple terms. Let's say you rely on someone to make bread for you. You taught them how to make bread, and now they took all their ingredients, they sold it at a cheaper rate, and they got it outsourced, which means they got it out to other customers faster than you, where they obviously made more money than you, and then they took over your market because not only did you give them the ingredients to make their own bread, but now they may have put cheaper ingredients in there to make it faster so the quality is down, but they're selling it at a faster rate to bring more money in you, which then knocks you off. And now you're relying on them, and you gave them the game, such as to make this bread, teaching them the ingredients on how to make the bread. And now you're relying on them to say, hey, can you sell me some bread? When you the one that taught them, but you done basically got replaced. And now your company and your bread company, or you making money selling bread, now all your profits and how much money you make is gone now because they're making more money than you. So now everybody is going to them, and you the one gave them the game. So now you have to go to them and say, hey, now I got to buy your bread because I can't make bread no more because I ain't making no more money. So now you stuck relying on them. And then now You thought they were going to teach you something in exchange for you teaching them how to make your bread, but instead they say, hell no. Thanks for teaching us how to make it. Now we're going to strengthen our company over here and feed ourselves while you starve. And you have to come to us to get some bread. That's basically how it was with our manufacturing jobs and what these liberal lunatics did with the Biden administration, open up to the borders and so forth, right? So it weakens the leverage, because what leverage you have if you done gave them the ingredients and now they making bread and you ran you out of business? You ain't got no leverage in the markets. You can't make no profits. They got to say so because they got the money to make a difference and have an influence when it comes to the bread in the bread market, right? And I'm just using that as an example to make it simple and easily understood. But when you look at all of this, right, that's basic power dynamics. So the argument here isn't anti-trade. It's not anti-corporation. It's not naivety. It's acknowledging that the grand bargain of the last few decades, ship the jobs overseas, get cheap goods, spread democracy, didn't play out the way it was advertised from the Democrat Party, especially. And we got the cheap goods, we got the mass migration pressures, we got hollowed out towns, but we did not get a fully liberalized China. We did not get the smooth transition for every displaced American worker. And we did not get a world where economic interdependence erased geopolitical rivalry. So now the question is, do we keep pretending the original theory was flawless, or do we adjust? Do we rebuild parts of our manufacturing base? Do we diversify supply chains? Do we stop assuming that every economic integration coming together leads to political peace or harmony? That's where Rubio is getting at here. It's not about isolation. It's about recalibration. It's about saying maybe the experiment didn't produce the full return on investment we were promised. And if that's the case, leadership means correcting course. Because at the end of the day, a government first obligation is to its own citizens, their jobs, their security, their stability, not to a global vision or abstract global vision that sounds nice at conferences, but leaves real communities dealing with the fallout. And that's the heart of the argument. Let them continue now.
This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward, to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own.
There you have it. And Rubio goes even further, as you guys heard. And this is where people really start clutching their pearls, because he says, look, even as our competitors are exploiting oil, exploiting oil, coal, natural gas, every energy source they can get their hands on, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against ours. So when you look at that, China is not shutting down coal plants. China is not slowing down industrial production because of climate conferences. They are pumping out energy at scale because energy equals power. Energy equals manufacturing. Energy equals military strength. Energy equals leverage. If you control energy, you control supply chains. If you control supply chains, you can control pressure points. And that's geopolitics 101. So when Rubio says that our competitors are using oil and gas as leverage, what he means is while we are restricting in our own production, regulating ourselves into a corner and raising costs at our own citizens in the name of climate virtue, our adversaries are ramping up production and gaining strategic advantage, and that's imbalanced. And I'm just going to say it straight. If China is still building coal plants every month and dumping CO2 into the atmosphere at record levels, then us economically kneecapping ourselves doesn't save the planet. It just weakens us. That's the reality. Climate policy does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a competitive world. If one country plays by strict environmental rules and the other doesn't, the one with looser rules produce cheaper goods, grows faster, and gains influence. And that's not a moral argument. That's an economic fact. So the point Rubio is making is not to destroy the environment. The point is don't unilaterally disarm in an energy war. Don't voluntarily make your own energy more expensive while your main competitor is using cheap, abundant energy to fuel industrial dominance. Because when energy prices rise here, factories leave. And when factories leave, jobs leave. When jobs leave, communities decline. It's all connected. And again, it ties back to the larger theme. We don't want to get it all. We don't want to go at it alone. We're not saying scrap alliances. We're not saying in multilateral cooperation. We're saying the old system isn't functioning the way it was sold to us, and pretending otherwise is delusional. Reform it, fix it, demand reciprocity. And yes, that means Europe needs to give up the fantasy that America will permanently subsidize their security while they fund expensive welfare states. Budgets are about priorities. If you prioritize massive social spending and under invest in defense, you are making a choice. So, a choice that assumes someone else will handle that hard power, and that someone else has been us, the United States of America. So, when the Trump administration says spend more on your own defense, embrace free markets, innovate, stand on your own feet, that is not an attack. That is an invitation to strength. Strong allies are self reliant allies. Strong allies don't drain you, they reinforce you. But we cannot be stronger together if the relationship is lopsided. We cannot pursue our national interests if we are constantly compensating for others who refuse to adjust. Right. And what blows my mind is how Democrats react to this like it's radical, like it's offensive to expect wealthy European nations to defend themselves. Why is that controversial? Why is asking a continent with advanced economies to hit agreed upon defense spending targets treated like hearsay? I'll tell you why. Because at the core of the modern Democrat worldview is how can I put this? Redistribution as the default solution. Domestically, it expands the welfare state. Throw money at the problem, subsidize, increase spending. Internationally, is similar logic. Subsidize allies, which means give them money, absorb the cost, maintain the system at any price, and there's no serious cost benefit analysis. There's no hard recalibration because you're constantly throwing money to help these other countries while they continue to use their money for what they want. And it just keeps funding it and hoping the optics remain stable. But leadership isn't about optics, it's about outcomes. And we want Europe strong, we want them capable. And if Russia ever decides to push further west, the best deterrent is a Europe that can immediately defend itself at scale, not one waiting for American reinforcements to do the heavy lifting. That's not abandonment, that's strategic depth. That's resilience. And what's really frustrating is watching Democrats go overseas and trash this country, the United States of America, on the world stage while these negotiations are happening. Debate all you want at home. Argue policy differences, that's politics. But when you're standing in front of foreign leaders undermining your own country's leverage mid-negotiation, that weakens us. It signals division, it signals hesitation, and in international politics, perceived weakness getting exploited. That's why Kamala Harris was weak, and that's why she opened the border. Right? So countries respect clarity and strength. They maneuver around division. So when you see politicians using international platforms to score domestic political points against their own administration, that's not noble. That's counterproductive. America should come first in those rooms always. And you could disagree on policy, but you don't undermine the negotiating position of your own country while competitors are watching. That's why this matters. This entire debate, rules-based order, burden sharing, globalization, energy policy, it all comes down to one thing. Are we willing to reassess a system that clearly has cracks in it, or are we going to cling to the slogans because they sound sophisticated? Rubio, Mike Waltz, and the Trump administration are saying reassess it, reform it, strengthen it by demanding fairness, and somehow that gets twisted into a screamism by someone like AOC. And it's not a scream to want reciprocity in a relationship or partnership, right? It's not a scream to want energy independence. It's not a scream to want allies who can stand on their own. That's basic strategy. And if that triggers people who are emotionally attached to the old framework, so be it. The world has changed. The system needs adjustment, and pretending everything is fine because the phrase rules-based order sounds nice isn't leadership, it's denial. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.